You know those places, those stores that just feel like they're part of the town's background. The grocery store your family always went to, maybe that department store downtown.
Yeah, absolutely. They become landmarks almost.
Exactly. They shape memories, daily routines.
Yeah.
You just assume they'll always be there. And then sometimes, bam,
Hmm.
they're gone. Almost overnight.
And it leaves this real sense of nostalgia, doesn't it, for
Oh,
these places that were just everywhere.
totally. And that feeling is exactly what we're diving into today. We're looking at the really compelling story, but also kind of a cautionary tale of the Big Bear Grocery Company and Hart stores.
Ah, Big Bear and Hearts. Definitely names that resonate if you grew up in Ohio or parts of West Virginia.
Right. So we're going to unpack how this regional powerhouse, which actually started way back in the Great Depression, came up with some incredibly innovative ideas for retail.
Ideas that were really ahead of their time.
Yeah. How they grew so big and then how they hit these challenges that in the end they just couldn't overcome after, what, 71 years.
A long run. 71 years is significant.
It really is. So our mission today is to understand, what were those specific innovations? What were the key decisions, both good and bad? And what were the outside forces pushing on them?
And what that whole journey tells us about retail itself, which is always, always changing, relentlessly.
Okay, let's get into it. How does something like Big Bear even start, especially during the Depression? That seems like the toughest time imaginable to launch a business.
It does, but sometimes hardship breeds innovation, right? So Big Bear Stores Company was founded in 1933. The founder was Wayne E. Brown, and this was right in Columbus, Ohio.
1933, wow.
Yeah, deep in the Depression. And Brown tapped into this desperate need people had for affordable food. The very first Big Bear supermarket, it opened at 1400 Cleveland Avenue. And get this,
What?
it was in an old roller skating rink.
No way. Or roller rink. That's resourceful.
Definitely. And what made it revolutionary wasn't just the location, it was the whole concept. It was huge. It was self-service, and the prices were incredibly low.
Okay, self-service. We take that for granted now, but back then.
Back then, most grocery shopping involved going up to a counter, asking for items. This was totally different. You pushed your own cart, picked your own stuff, big scale, low prices. It basically pioneered the whole supermarket idea.
And the name Big Bear, where did that come from?
Pretty simple, actually. It was apparently inspired by Big Bear Creek nearby, gave it a local feel right from the start.
Huh. So you can just imagine people walking into this huge former roller rink, able to grab things themselves, seeing these low prices. It must have felt like a different world compared to the small corner grocer, especially when money was so tight.
It absolutely shifted the whole experience, and that core idea scale, self-service value, it really worked. That's what fueled their initial growth.
So they started strong. How did they keep that momentum going through the 30s and 40s?
Well, they expanded steadily, but smartly, mostly within Ohio at first, focusing on Columbus and the areas around it. They stuck to what worked. That promise of value, quality, and importantly, convenience. People really responded to that.
Okay, so steady growth. But then things really started to accelerate, right? By the 50s, they weren't just a Columbus thing. They were a proper regional chain.
Yeah.
What pushed them to that next level? This is where it's really interesting, I think.
It does. Several things came together. One was definitely their store design. They started building these large modern stores and, crucially, with lots of parking.
Ah, the parking, catering to the car culture.
Exactly. As people moved to the suburbs, Big Bear was right there waiting for them. That sounds obvious now, maybe, but it was smart planning then.
What else?
They also got into private label products pretty early. Their own brands, offering good quality but cheaper than the national names. That builds trust and saves people money.
Good strategy. Keeps
Yeah.
people loyal.
And they really embedded themselves in the community, sponsoring local events, little league teams, that kind of thing. They became a fixture. It wasn't just a store, it was their store.
That community connection, yeah. So large stores, parking, private labels, community focus. That sounds like a solid recipe for growth back then.
It really was. It set the stage for their next big move.
Which brings us to 1964,
Yeah.
a really pivotal year you mentioned. They acquired Hart stores. Tell us about Hart's. Who were they?
Right, Hart Stores. They were a discount retail chain, founded a bit later, in 1951, by a guy named Harry Allen Schwartz. They were mostly in Ohio and West Virginia.
And what did they sell? Not groceries, right?
No, general merchandise,
Wow.
clothing, housewares, hardware, toys, that sort of discount department store stuff.
Okay, so Big Bear buys Hart's. What was the thinking there?
This is where it gets fascinating, or strategically. The synergy. Suddenly, Big Bear wasn't just a grocer anymore. They diversified into general retail.
Hmm.
And the really clever part, they often put Heart stores right next to or even connected to Big Bear supermarkets.
Creating a sort of early supercenter.
Exactly, a one-stop shop. Get your groceries at Big Bear, then walk over to Hearts for, I don't know, school clothes or a new toaster. It was incredibly convenient for shoppers.
Decades before Walmart really perfected that model. That's
Yeah.
pretty visionary.
It really was, and it worked. By the 1970s, the combined company was huge for a regional player. Over 50 Big Bears, something like 65 Heart stores across Ohio, West Virginia, even parts of Michigan, thousands of employees. They were a major force.
That scale is impressive. So this combined approach, the grocery and the general merchandise side by side, that took them into their peak years, the 1980s.
Absolutely. The 80s were really their high point. Big Bear Stores Company was a dominant regional player. Let's see, the numbers were around 54 Big Bear supermarkets and still about 65 Heart stores. They were everywhere in their core markets.
And were they still innovating during this peak? Or just riding the wave?
Oh, they were still pushing. This is when they launched the Big Bear Plus concept.
Big Bear Plus. Okay, what was that?
These were even larger stores. They took that co-location idea and integrated it further. Groceries and Heart-style general merchandise all under one bigger roof. Think food, electronics, clothes, everything.
So directly competing with the newer, bigger players starting to emerge then, like Meijer or even early Walmart supercenters.
Precisely. They saw the competitive landscape shifting and tried to adapt. They also rolled out early versions of customer loyalty programs, discounts, special promotions, ways to keep people coming back specifically to Big Bear.
Makes sense. Trying to lock in that customer base.
And they really were, as you said earlier, woven into the community fabric, especially in Columbus. Certain stores, like the one on Lane Avenue, became real hubs. People didn't just shop there, they met neighbors there, maybe had their first job bagging groceries there. It was part of life.
And Hart's was doing well, too, during this time.
Yeah, Hart's was a successful discount chain in its own right. Broad selection, low prices. It really appealed to that budget-conscious shopper.
So the 80s sound like the golden era. Dominant, innovative, community-focused. They seem like they're on top of the world. But, uh-oh, I sense a but coming.
There's always a but in these stories, isn't there? The late 80s and especially the 90s. That's when the cracks started to appear. The ground began shifting under their feet.
Okay, what happened? Was it just competition?
Competition was a huge part of it, yeah. You had the national chains, Kroger was always a rival, Meijer kept growing, and then there was Walmart. Walmart's expansion with its supercenters was relentless, and they directly targeted that Big Bear Plus model, often with even lower prices and, frankly, newer, more efficient stores.
Lower prices are tough to beat, especially when you're a regional player against a national giant scale.
Exactly. And then you add the economy. The early 1990s had that recession. People tightened their belts, became even more price sensitive.
Right.
It just intensified the whole competitive pressure cooker.
So external pressure is mounting. Anything happening inside the company that made things harder?
Yes. And this is critical. In 1988, Big Bear Stores Company was acquired.
Oh, by who?
A company called Penn Traffic. They were a grocery conglomerate based out of Syracuse, New York. The price was about $387 million.
Okay, an acquisition. That can be good or bad.
In this case, it turned out to be problematic for a couple of key reasons. First, the deal loaded Big Bear up with a lot of debt. That restricts your ability to invest and maneuver.
Right. Less cash for store upgrades or fighting price wars.
Precisely. But maybe even more damaging was the shift in control. Decision-making moved away from Columbus, away from the local management who really understood the Ohio and West Virginia markets intimately.
So decisions being made from Syracuse, maybe without that local nuance?
That's what many observers point to. Strategic missteps started happening. Maybe stocking the wrong products for local tastes, being slow to renovate stores that were starting to look dated compared to the competition. That local agility they once had, it started to fade.
And that debt, plus the distance.
Yeah.
It hampered their ability to react.
Severely. They got stuck with aging stores, modernization became inconsistent, and behind the scenes, things like supply chain efficiency, which is absolutely crucial in the low-margin grocery business, started to lag.
Logistics and tech.
Yeah. Their systems became outdated compared to the national giants who were investing heavily in technology to cut costs and improve inventory management. Big Bear just couldn't keep up that pace.
And what about Hart's during this time? They were facing pressure too.
Absolutely. Hertz faced the same operational issues, plus intense competition from the big national discounters like Kmart, Target, and again, Walmart. Those guys had enormous purchasing power and very slick operations. Hart started to look a bit tired, a bit dated.
So we start seeing closures then.
Yes, sadly. Hart stores began closing in the mid-1990s. It wasn't all at once, but by about 1998, most of them were gone.
Wow. So that whole diversification strategy, the one-stop shop that started to unravel.
Completely. Some Harts were converted into Big Bear Plus stores, trying to salvage something. Others were just sold off or closed down.
So that raises a big question, doesn't it? Losing Hearts, how did that impact Big Bear itself? Did it weaken them further?
Oh, significantly. Remember how innovative that combined grocery general merchandise strategy was? Losing Hearts basically stripped that away. It forced Big Bear back into competing just on groceries.
At exactly the time when the grocery market was getting brutally competitive and consolidating.
The worst possible time. They lost their main differentiator and had to go head-to-head on price and selection against giants like Kroger and Walmart, who were just getting stronger and stronger. It was a really tough position.
You can see the writing on the wall, unfortunately.
Yeah.
Which brings us to the early 2000s. Things must have been looking pretty bleak.
They were. Big Bear was in serious financial trouble. That pen traffic debt was like an anchor, and the, let's call it mismanagement from afar, just kept making things worse.
Yeah.
The market share was slipping away.
Did they try anything? Any last-ditch efforts?
They did. There were attempts to revitalize the chain, some story models, new marketing campaigns trying to recapture that old magic.
Yeah.
But it just wasn't enough.
Too little, too late.
Essentially, yes. The debt was too high, the competition too fierce, the stores too often behind the curve. And then the parent company, Penn Traffic, they ran into their own massive financial problems.
So the parent company faltered.
Big time. Penn Traffic filed for Chapter 11 bankruptcy in 2003. And when the parent company goes down,
It drags the subsidiaries down with it.
exactly, Big Bear was dragged into the bankruptcy proceedings.
So the end game was near.
Very near. In January 2004, Penn Traffic made the announcement. They were closing all 54 remaining Big Bear stores.
All of them. Wow.
All of them. The reason cited was just unsustainable losses. The final stores shut their doors in the spring of 2004.
71 years. Just gone.
Gone, and with it, over 3,000 people lost their jobs. A really significant blow to those communities.
Absolutely devastating. So what happened afterwards? What became of all those empty Big Bear and Hearts buildings?
It was a mixed bag, really. A lot of them sat vacant for a while, which isn't great for a neighborhood. Eventually, competitors like Kroger or Giant Eagle took over some locations.
Repurposed them?
Right, others were just demolished or converted into completely different things, gyms, offices, other types of retail. That Lane Avenue store in Columbus, the iconic one,
Yeah.
that site was completely redeveloped into like a mixed-use commercial center. So the physical presence, in many cases, was erased.
But the memory isn't, right? You mentioned nostalgia. People still talk about Big Bear.
Oh, absolutely, especially in Ohio. The Big Bear brand, it still holds a lot of nostalgic weight. You see people online, on social media like X, sharing memories, talking about shopping there as kids, the jingle maybe.
That community connection again, even after all this time.
It really stuck. People remember it for being affordable, for being part of their town. But beyond the nostalgia, what stands out to you about the legacy? What's the bigger lesson here?
Well, I think their story is such a powerful case study in how retail evolves, isn't it?
Mm.
It shows how vital it is for companies, even regional ones, maybe especially regional ones, to adapt constantly.
And how hard that is when you're up against national consolidation and these massive competitors with huge economies of scale. Being innovative early on, like Big Bear was, it's amazing. But it's not enough if you can't keep pace and defend that innovation.
Yeah, their early success almost provided a roadmap for others who came later with maybe more resources or better timing.
It kind of did, and it highlights the risk of losing that agility, that local touch, especially after an acquisition like the Penn Traffic deal. That shifting control seems like a major factor in their inability to respond effectively later on.
So, wrapping this up, the whole Big Bear and Heart story, it's more than just one company's rise and fall. It really mirrors that huge shift we've seen in retail, doesn't it? From these innovative local players to this era dominated by national giants.
It really does. It shows just how tough it is for regional chains to survive when those behemoths move in. And it underscores how corporate buyouts, especially ones involving a lot of debt and a loss of local control, can be, well, fatal. Sometimes the deal that looks good on paper ends up undermining the very strengths that made the company valuable in the first place.
So a final thought for everyone listening. As you're maybe shopping this week, whether it's in a giant supercenter or clicking buy online, think about the journey retail has taken. Consider those early pioneers like Big Bear and Hearts who really did pave the way for the convenience we often take for granted now.
Yeah, what does it truly take for a business to last in a market that just never stops changing? Is being deeply connected to your community enough when the competition is just so intense and operates on a totally different scale?
Is it always about getting bigger? Or is there still room, maybe even a need, for those agile, locally focused pioneers? Something to think about.